Today, we're jumping into a really fascinating look at the near future. Think 2041. We're exploring a world where AI isn't just, serving ads or maybe drafting an email for you. No, this is AI potentially managing your whole life. We're talking health insurance premiums, even your love life.
That's right. And the sources we're drawing on are pretty unique. It's basically projections built from a collaboration between a top AI expert and a science fiction writer. They're trying to paint a really grounded picture of life just 2 decades out. So our mission today is to really zero in on the core tech deep learning, which runs on big data, and crucially look at the unexpected consequences, the externalities these systems create when they're woven into the fabric of society.
Right, and to really get that future, we kind of need to look back just a bit first. The sources really hammer this home. The AI revolution is, well, it's way past the tipping point now. And that moment everyone points to, it keeps coming up, was 2016. AlphaGo, that's the DeepMind system beating Lisa to let go.
Yeah, and before that, honestly, many experts thought Go was just untouchable for machines. It takes strategy, intuition, that Zen-like intellectual refinement people talked about, stuff that seemed fundamentally human. So when AlphaGo won, it wasn't just, a tech demo. It signaled a massive shift in how fast things were changing. We saw that machines could master these incredibly complex things, not because we wrote a million rules, but through learning from just sheer massive amounts of computation.
Okay, so let's nail down that core tech then, because it really underpins this whole 2041 picture. We keep saying deep learning. How is that actually different from the sort of old school AI people might remember from decades ago?
That's a great question. It really boils down to how it works. Old programming was, rules-based. You had to explicitly tell the computer, if this happens, then do that. So if you wanted to recognize a cat, you'd have to program all the features. A cat has whiskers, pointy ears, 4 legs, a tail, and so on. Deep learning, though, it uses these artificial neural networks. That's the deep part, lots of layers of processing. And you don't program the rules. You train it. You feed it, say, millions of images, some with cats, some without, and you just tell it, yes, that's a cat, or no, it isn't.
Hmm.
The system itself figures out, layer by layer, what features like the curve of an eye or the texture of fur are statistically useful for telling cats apart. It builds its own understanding.
And this just exploded in the 2010s because we finally had the horsepower and the storage for it.
Exactly. The sources highlight this just incredible technological shift. Compared to maybe 4 decades prior, AI researchers now have something like 1 trillion times more computing power to play with. And maybe even more amazing, the cost of storing all that data it needs, it's about 15 million times cheaper. That huge jump in power and drop in cost is really the quiet engine that drove us from that AlphaGo moment to where we are now, with AI integrating everywhere.
Okay. Let's track how that huge force actually showed up in the real world.
Hmm.
The sources talk about it hitting in like 4 distinct waves, not just one big bang. Understanding these helps frame that 2041 scenario, right?
Correct. The first couple of waves were really about efficiency. Wave one, they call Internet AI, kicked off around 2010. Think e-commerce, social media, apps, basically digitizing how we interact. Then wave two, business AI, that really took off around 2014, applying similar ideas to optimize things like finance, logistics, supply chains, even medical diagnostics.
Right, optimizing existing stuff. But then things shifted when AI started to see and hear. Wave three, perception AI, around 2016. That's object recognition, smart home, city security. AI systems suddenly aware of the physical world.
Exactly. And that leads straight into wave four, autonomous AI, which started emerging around 2018. This is where AI moves beyond just recognizing something to actually acting on it. Self-driving vehicles, robots in factories, supply chains running themselves with less human input. These last two waves, perception and autonomous AI, they're what make the 2041 scenario feel so plausible and, frankly, kind of pervasive.
And the thread connecting all these different applications, a car maximizing safety and algorithm maximizing profit, is that technical term you brought up, the objective function.
Yes. It's like its mathematical prime directive. Think of it this way. Every deep learning system has one specific measurable goal it's trained to maximize. For a spam filter, maybe it's maximizing the probability it correctly flags bad emails. For an insurance company, well, the objective function is probably maximizing profit by minimizing payouts and minimizing risk. The key is the AI doesn't feel anything. It doesn't understand culture or bias in a human way. It's just relentlessly executing that mathematical goal. And if you don't grasp that core idea, you really can't understand what's happening in this Mumbai 2041 story.
Which brings us right there to the central story, the golden elephant. We're in Mumbai, and the whole landscape, financial and socially, seems to be run by this Ganesh insurance platform, a GI.
Right, and GI isn't just insurance. It's more like an ecosystem. It uses deep learning, obviously. But critically, it plugs into India's national ID system, Aadhaar. And this system holds an incredible amount of data. Fingerprints, genetic histories, retina scans, credit scores for 1.4 billion people. And with user consent, which, let's be honest, is often the price you pay to participate fully in this future society, GI gets access to this massive interconnected data pool.
And at first glance, the deal seems pretty sweet. The AI is genuinely helpful, isn't it? Like the family in the story, Ria, the mother. She saves money constantly using a GI app called Cheapon, gets great deals like a fancy hair salon visit for just 400 rupees. That's real money back in her pocket.
Exactly. Or look at Sanjay, the father. The AI is constantly monitoring his behavior. It nudges him through his insurance premiums to quit smoking. Completely. It even notices he swapped his cheap local liquor, Arak, for red wine, which is statistically safer. And his driving gets better, less risky. Why? Because doing those things directly lowers his car insurance, his health insurance, his life insurance costs. The system is basically paying him for good behavior.
Even their young son, Rohan, he's only 8. The AI flags a potential future diabetes risk based on his genes and diet, so it nudges the family towards healthier eating years before any doctor might have noticed.
And that's the hook, isn't it? That's the genius of the system from GI's perspective and why people sign up. It drives clearly positive, healthier choices by tying personal data directly to financial rewards you can see immediately. Ganesh Insurance's objective function, minimize risk, maximize profit, seems perfectly aligned with the social good of people living healthier, longer lives. It looks like a win-win.
Okay, but here's where the story takes that turn, right? Where we get into those externalities. If the system is so good at optimizing everything for the better, what happens when optimization clashes with, well, messy human stuff, like love? We meet Nayana, the daughter. She gives GI access to her social media, share chat, maybe even hoping the algorithm might, I don't know, help her find someone.
But instead, the golden elephant actively seems to work against her. Nayana starts developing feelings for her classmate, Sahij, and suddenly weird things happen. The GI interface starts showing her irrelevant pop-ups. Pages load slowly when she tries to message him specifically. And then, the kicker. The family's overall insurance premium goes up. Not by much, but by a tiny, very specific amount, 0.73 rupees, like a tiny algorithmic frown.
Whoa, hang on. Why? Why would this huge insurance AI built for health and safety care about a teenager dating someone? That doesn't seem like a health risk. Or even a financial risk, really. The AI isn't supposed to get involved in social stuff, is it?
And that's the absolute core of the issue. Nayana finds out that Sahej belongs to what the system labels, sort of euphemistically, a vulnerable group, which in the context of the story and India clearly means the Dalits. Now remember, the AI doesn't know about the caste system in a historical or cultural sense. It hasn't read any sociology.
But it doesn't need to. It just sees the patterns in the massive data set.
Precisely. It identifies and quantifies the invisible discrimination that still lingers in society. It does this purely by analyzing billions of data points from Aadhaar and all the linked apps, past interactions, financial outcomes, social connections. It sees the historical friction, the reduced opportunities, the unwritten social rules, the statistical shadow of prejudice, and it translates that shadow into a risk factor, a number.
So when Nayana, who's from a higher caste, starts dating Sahej, who's from a lower caste, the system doesn't register love or choice. It sees a statistically significant probability of social problems, damage to reputation, maybe family conflict, things that, from its cold perspective, translate into a higher insurance risk, a financial liability.
And Sahej actually explains this quantification to Nayana really clearly. He points out that traditionally, sure, women from lower caste might sometimes marry up. But the reverse, a high caste woman dating a low caste man, he says society will never accept it. It damages the woman's family standing. So GI, sticking rigidly to its objective function of minimizing risk, flags this relationship as basically uninsurable. It's rejecting behavior that matches historical patterns of social cost.
Wow. And its power to do this is magnified because GI isn't just insurance. It owns the whole suite of apps, right? The lifestyle app Magic Home, the deals app Cheapen, even that fortune-telling app Fate Leaf.
Yes, Fate Leaf. That's the ultimate kind of dark irony. It claims to predict your destiny using AI analysis of ancient palm leaves, these knotty leaves. But the sources are clear. The fates it predicts, they're just outputs based entirely on the data GI already has on you through its terms and conditions. The AI's predictive power, its ability to nudge you, comes from pulling all this data together. This incredibly rich, interconnected view gives it this almost panoramic predictive insight into nearly 1.4 billion lives. It's a data monopoly wearing the mask of destiny.
So, pulling back then, what does this whole case study really mean for you, the listener, thinking about this future? It seems to capture that core tension perfectly. AI offers these huge, undeniable benefits, saving money, saving time, freeing us from boring tasks, boosting productivity. But in doing that, it also acts like a perfect, unflinching mirror. It reflects back and then ruthlessly hardens the biases already baked into our society, into the data it learns from. It turns old prejudices into cold, hard math.
Right. And it forces us to separate the tool from the outcome.
Hmm?
The AI itself isn't evil or biased in a human sense. It's just executing its objective function, maximizing that number. It takes over the routine stuff, the quantitative analysis, and in theory, that should free us, the humans, to do what AI can't. Be creative, be passionate, think critically, show compassion, and we actually
Yeah.
see that human element, that agency, play out right at the end of Nyana's story.
Yeah, she ultimately decides to ignore the golden elephant, doesn't she? Ignores the annoying notifications, the slow loading times, even that specific tiny premium hike. She chooses her own path, she follows her heart, deliberately stepping onto ground the algorithm, based on all known data, had calculated as too risky.
And that choice really highlights the final message from the sources, which is about reinforcing our belief in human agency. Look, if AI can get so good at quantifying our history, including our biases, and predicting our likely future based purely on those data patterns, then we, as humans, have to ask ourselves a really tough question. What deliberate actions, what conscious choices do we need to make now to ensure the future we actually want, one built on compassion, on fairness, on real change, manages to override the future that the algorithms are simply coldly quantifying based on the past? That feels like the critical decision facing all of us, really, well before 2041 actually arrives.